Hi guys. What I thought I'd do today is going through fixing issues and actually do client case studies. So showing you where I've actually took somebody and started to apply the work, so you can see what I see, what I get to, and then why I give the advice I give. Now, for today's one, I'm going to use a gentleman called Charlie. He reached out to me on Instagram, so my Instagram handle is there. So please feel free. If you have any physical issues that you think are limiting your ability to perform in strength training, feel free to follow me, drop me a DM, and I'll talk through the process. So basically, Charlie had seen a video I'd done on hip mobility, and I'll put in here, I'll put somewhere in the video like a clip of the hip mobility drill, so you can see what it is. It's essentially a squat pattern where you change the position of your feet. And the idea is that it loosens off your hips before you do any sort of squatting, to allow you full range of motion and access to all the muscles in your hips. He'd seen that, and he sort of messaged me to say he'd done it, he'd found it's helped, but he's been struggling with issues and could I help any further? So what he told me is essentially he feels he's got piriformis syndrome. So what that is where your nerves are trapping in your hip. It's something that he's suffered with for quite a while. He has pain in his hips, tightness in his hamstrings and his lower back, and a frequent trapped nerve sensation. And he mentioned that nothing's really helped, stuff from the physio and the doctors. Obviously, they're giving painkillers to ease it. And it's not constant, it's just, it happens quite frequently. However, since he's been doing that first drill, it's helped, and he wondered if I had any more advice that I could give him. So off the back of that, the first bit of advice, which I'll talk about in a while, was to get him to start rolling his feet. So literally taking like a lacrosse ball, or like a really small hard ball, or even like a broom handle will work, barefoot or just in a pair of socks, putting all your weight on it and rolling through to loosen off the muscles on the bottom of your foot. Now, something I'll talk about in other videos is basically we've got two sides of our body. We've got what's called your superficial back line and your superficial front line. And obviously the back line starts with the base of your foot, and it's all the muscles that work at the back of your body. And as the old saying goes, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And for a lot of people that wear trainers or footwear that has a raised heel in it, which most trainers do, they generally have tight muscles on the bottom of their feet. And if that's tight, it will pull everything else in the chain tight, which can cause problems. So the first thing I got him to do was do that. And then the second thing is I taught him about doing nerve flossing, which is basically a way for you to move your body in a certain range of motion, which can help you untrap a nerve where it's being pinched by muscles. I got him to do that. First bit of feedback was that helped, but he never really found that nerve flossing worked. It just felt like he couldn't trigger the points that he needed to. So for me, I was like, okay, I need to see how you move to try and figure out what's going on. So I asked him politely, would you mind just sending me a video of you walking away from the camera and walking towards it? So what I'm going to do in the video, I'll post here the video that he sent me, and I might share it a few times to help highlight what I'm talking about. So if you watch the video, there's two things I want you to do. I want you to look at his lower body to start off with, and then when I play it again, look at his upper body. So the two things we've got in his lower body, he's got what we call a duck walk. If you look at his feet, rather than track him forwards, his feet pointing out as he walks. The other thing you'll notice, he has what I call like the fridge shuffle. His hips aren't swinging as he walks. He's kind of like, it's almost like the old movies where you'd see like Frankenstein or a mummy, and it's kind of like this. It's almost like his legs are locked and he's having to lift to move forwards. Now, if we watch the upper body part of the video, which I'm now going to play again, so just look from the waist up, you'll probably notice that his hands are swinging, but look at his shoulders. You'll notice that his upper body is very static. His shoulders aren't moving, it's just his arms are swinging. And he's got minimal torso movement in his walking pattern. Now, what we are assessing here when we're doing this is what we call your gait. So your gait is basically the pattern in which you walk at. And as humans, we have an optimal gait pattern that we should all be able to follow. And it's essentially where your body's rotating as you walk. So as I step forward with my right foot, my left ribs rotate inwards. And then as I swap, it rotates again. Obviously, this is a very exaggerated pattern, but that's essentially what should happen. Your shoulders should move side to side, your hips should move side to side, and your feet should move forwards. But that's not what we saw here in this video. Again, I'll play it one more time here so you can see it. I might slow it down a little bit. So again, you'll notice toes are pointing out. You'll notice the little fridge shuffle going on. And like I said, if you look when he's walking back towards you, his arms are swinging, but his shoulders are very static. His torso is very still. His chest isn't rotating. He's very dead center. So what does that tell us? What's causing this pattern of movement? So the first thing is his hips are what's called, they're stuck in what's called external rotation. So your hips, your pelvis, is actually two bones connected by a joint in the middle. And they're designed, so if that's like your pelvis, or technically that's like what your pelvis looks like, your pelvis is designed to do this. It can do that as well, but mainly it's designed to do this. So if that's neutral, as they turn out, that's called external rotation. As they come inwards, that's called internal rotation. And something that's very common in people that do a lot of strength training, their hips get stuck into what's called a compensatory position. Because a lot of the work that you do, like squats, like deadlifts, like if you do a lot of heavy overhead pressing, you're naturally locking your hips in a fixed position to handle the loads you're trying to lift. And that isn't actually natural. And it causes us to get stuck in a position. And it's very common, if you look at guys that lift a lot of weight, they have this duck walk, their feet point out, because their hips are stuck in external rotation. Some of the issue with that is that it's going to affect how your hips can function, which then affects how the muscles can activate. If you're stuck in external rotation, you can't turn your glutes on properly. And that's where I saw the issue of why nerve flossing wasn't working, because his hip structure wasn't sat correct. Another thing we noticed is there's no thoracic spine mobility. Again, when he's walking, his torso's dead still. He doesn't have any of this mobility. Why? Because he's stuck in external rotation, these muscles up here are having to turn on. The lower back muscles are turning on instead of his glutes. So he's sort of taught to keep his body rigid. Okay? Now, these are things that your body learns to do to operate optimally for what you're asking it to do. So if you're somebody that strength trains 4 or 5 times a week and you're putting excessive load and stress through your body is going to do whatever it can to make you safe and stable to execute the demands you're asking it. And some of those compensatory positions it gets itself into actually can cause risk of injury further down the line because your body's then not operating how it's supposed to. So how do we fix this? There's a number of things that we can do which will help alleviate the problem. It's not going to fix it overnight, but the more you do these things, the quicker it's going to turn this around. So I've already mentioned rolling the bottom of the foot and helping release the superficial back line. So ideally, anytime you've been in trainers for a long period of time, at the end of the day, especially before you start training, spend 90 seconds to 2 minutes rolling your foot. What's important is do obviously 1 foot at a time, but you want to put your weight into the foot. Like if you've ever done foam rolling, which to most cases is a waste of time, but that's another video, you want to make it uncomfortable. It wants to be like a 7 out of 10 for discomfort. And you really want to work on pushing in through from the base of the toes all the way to the heel. You can flex your toes. You can roll on the outside of the foot, the inside of the foot. Again, 90 seconds to 2 minutes on one foot, 90 seconds to 2 minutes on the other foot. The next thing we want to do is we want to perform movements that put us into internal rotation. So whilst I'm talking, again, I'll upload a video in here whilst I'm talking to show you some movement patterns, and I'll talk through them. So one that I found is a really good one for people to use is we're going to go into a split stance position. So while 1 foot is forward, you're going to slide 1 foot back so that the big toe is about 1 inch or 2 behind the heel of the other foot, and you're going to raise your heel. From there, you're going to keep your feet quite close in stance, and you're going to do an RDL. And to do that, you've got to imagine you're wearing a corset, and what's important is you don't lean forward, you push your butt back. And as you do that, what's going to happen is your hips are going to want to try and open out because you're naturally stuck in external rotation, but they can't. So it's going to force you into this internal rotation position. And you're going to want to do sort of 10 reps on one leg, swap feet, 10 reps on the other. Do that for sort of 3 or 4 sets. It will feel a bit weird at first, and you're going to feel like you're going to want to turn your hips out, and you might feel a bit of a pull on your knee, because obviously your knee is the midpoint between your hip and your foot on the floor. But it's going nice and steady into a range of motion that you can handle. It's not about can you touch the floor, it's just about, right, how far can I get? The great thing about this is it also teaches you to stretch your glutes and stretch your hamstring. So it does tick a few boxes at once. That's lower body, but then you can also do it for upper body in a row position and a press position. So again, I'll put video up here. So you have to go into an opposite stance to the arm that's working. So if you're pressing or pulling with your left arm, obviously it's your right foot that's forward and vice versa. For these ones, we're working on that upper body rotation. So what's really important when you're doing the pressing or the pulling in this split stance is that you're not rotating at the hip, you're only rotating at the rib cage. And for some people, that takes a bit of practice. However, again, 3 sets of 10 per arm, rowing and pressing. There, you've got a nice little 3 movement circuit before you train. So again, we warm up with a foot roll. We then do some RDLs, but in a split stance. And we're then also going to do some banded rows and some banded presses, all in this split stance position. There is another movement we can add in that's called a king deadlift. A lot of people struggle with this because it's a bit of a trickier movement to get your head around. Essentially, it's standing with your feet together, almost pinching your knees, and you're going to lift your hip to raise one foot higher than the other. And then again, from there, it's like doing an RDL. So pinch the knees, brace the core, imagine you're wearing a corset, don't bend over, push the hips back as far as you comfortably can, and then stand back tall again. That is a bit more of a complicated one for people to feel and understand, but the more you get used to it, the stronger you'll get. Something that I haven't written on here, but it's something worth looking at, is working on your abductors and your adductors, so the muscles on the inside of your leg and the outside of your leg. You can use the old booty machines that the women like to use, so you're squeezing your hips in. You can do clams, so laying on the floor with a band around your knees, opening your legs out. That's a great way for turning your glutes on. But there's loads of different adductor exercises that you can find. What's important is finding one that feels right to you and you can feel the muscle working. It's not a case of do this exercise. It's a case of, right, try all the different adductor exercises you can find one that you go, yep, I can feel that working. So in short, that's how we'd want to fix. If you have a similar position, if you film yourself walking and you notice your feet are flared out, you've got this almost like fridge shuffle going on, and you notice that you're not really rotating with the upper body, roll your feet. Exercises that force you into internal rotation, working your glutes and your adductors. If you start adding those in, you're going to start seeing a massive improvement in your performance. Again, any questions, drop them below. However, if you want me to look at your movement patterns, if there's a certain movement you're not sure if you're doing it properly, if you notice you have discomfort in your hips, your back, your legs, whatever, feel free to follow me on Instagram, drop me a message, and I'll work through it with you. Hopefully you found this beneficial and interesting. As usual, the beggy part, subscribe, like, comment, share. That'd be brilliant. Thank you.